Chapter 12 of the Radio Phenomena. Section deals with the wave propagation prominently with the ionosphere, with the head of the radio wave, with the bullshit, with the detail, with the you're encouraged with the review, with the data contained with the novice section of this book. If you're thoroughly familiar with the element 2 with the novice, with the study questions 12 with the element 2 with the general and technician study questions contained herein before with the federal communication test. What's meant with the term with the maximum unusual with the frequency, held with the distance, with the critical frequency of the radio wave, with it being transmitted with the upward direction frequency gradually increase to the point with the reach where over the wave is refracted with a sufficiently to curve that its path back to the earth. Instead of these wave with the continually upward with the next layer with the wind and refraction continue with the frequency sufficient high wave will penetrate with all the layers ionosphere with the continuing on with the into wave with the highest frequency within which for the return of the earth transmitted vertically into the ionosphere with the condition with the all with the vertical frequency and channel with the high with the lower frequency with the more easily signal with the infracted conversely higher frequency more difficult with the refracting bending process figure 12.1 illustrates the point we see with the 1 megahertz signal that refracted back to the earth at a different location 20 megahertz signal the distance between the transmitting antenna point over the wave of the return of the earth depends on the angle of the propagation of the ionosphere, which of the turn depends on the frequency, high frequency, which of the return of the earth given the distance called the new maximum usable frequency, or MUF. With the critical frequency, high frequency that will return to the earth, maximal usable frequency is the highest frequency that will return to the earth at a given distance. Defined with the term of the virtual height, with one to the most frequently used method, long distance transmission, U with the skywave, with the skywaves are low, with the wave radiate transmitting antenna with it into a direction producing a large angle of the reference of the earth of the skywave with the ability to strike with the ionosphere. Refracted back to the ground by the skywave of the strike with the ionosphere, but is not sharply reflected light and like a light in a mirror, but instead of the penetrate with the ionosphere with a continuous fashion with the merge of the ionosphere with the up to back to with the earth after with the wave leave the transmission antenna before with the strike with the ionosphere with the travel the straight line also travel another straight line on the way back to the earth after it leaves the ionosphere with the part of the project straight lines into the space with the meet with the measuring point of the possible even beyond with the ionosphere layer with the point referred to with the virtual height of the ionosphere, where the D and E layers of the ionosphere with a different density of the ionization, the different height of the make of the ionosphere appear with those layers. Have layers. They actually have to be no sharp with the defined line between the layers, but with the purpose of the discussion, sharp with the demarcation is indicated. Ionized atmosphere with the amplitude between 40 and 50 miles with the color of the D layer with the ionization low with the light will affect the propagation radio waves, except with the absorption of the energy of the radio waves as they pass through. The D layer is the present only during the day, with the present greatly reduces the field of the intensity of the transmission must pass. For the daylight zone with the band amplitude, the amplitude between 50 and 90 miles contained with the A layer with a well-defined band of the greatest intensity with the altitude about 70 miles layer. This layer is stronger and during the daylight hours and also present with the become when the waker at night with the maximum density of the E layer appears only at noon local time. Ionization E layer with the middle of the day sometimes efficiently and intensive with the refract with a frequency of 20 megahertz back to the earth. Action great importance daylight transmission with a distance up to 1500 miles to define sporadic E layer. Additional layers ionized atmosphere with appear with a regularity erratic patch of the ionized atmosphere with the current occur with the E layer heights of the manner with the cloud with the appear within the sky with the patch of the refer with the sporadic E ionization often present with a significant number of the intensity of it enable the very VHF radio transmission over the distance is normally possible. Sometimes sporadic ionizations appear with a considerable length of the varying altitude with the actual proof of the harmful of the radio transmission with the Auroria effect. The Auroria is thought with a collection of ions trapped over the electromagnetic field of the usually associated with the ionospheric storm during the storm of the low frequency communication with sometimes with the disturb with the complete with the VH communications often enhanced and found with the Boreals reflect these of the VHF signals that enable long-range communication at high frequencies. Reflection is known as the Aurora effect. Ground-reflected wave. The ground-reflected wave is a portion of space wave of the space wave of the reflected with the surface over the Earth. The intensity of the which wave reflected with the dependent on the coefficient of the reflection of the surface over the strike with the angle of an instant relation between the director of the wave of the ground reflected with the wave is shown in figure 12.2 with the further the understanding of the action of the reflection can show with the diagram 12.3. Diagram show with the reflection of the light with the reflection of electromagnetic energy occur with much of the same with the wave of the angle incident with the equal with the angle reflection chain with the phase of the instant of the reflective of the wave that is seen with the difference of the direction of polarization instant of the reflective wave with 180 degrees out of phase. It's obvious that the ground reflective wave may cover the decrease in the intensity of the direct wave that both arrive at the receiver of the antenna. However, the maximum frequency, usable frequency, determined with the variation critical frequency monogram with the frequency table to prepare with the predict maximum usable frequency for every hour of the day. Almost every locality where the transmissions are made, not nanograms or frequency table to prepare with the data observation and experimental from stations scattered all over the earth. All of the information proved with the result of the tablet, even in the form of long-range predictions. Remove most of the guesswork from the radio and communication nanograms and frequency table to the amateur radio operator to simply check with the highest band that are equipped to over the DX activity. Some of the transmission bands designated with the federal communication over the the maximum usable frequency in amateurs, the high frequency available to do with the DX present on the table to represent with the National Bureau of Standards, Central Radio Publication Laboratory, and available to Superintendent Documents of Washington, D.C. 20402. The relation between the ionosphere of the propagation of the high frequency of the very high frequency amateur band, high frequency between 3 and 300 megahertz of the very high frequency band is 300 to 300 megahertz. For the increased ionization during the day of the ionosphere of the reasonable several inputs in chain with the sky with the wave transmission cause sky wave to return to the earth and near the point of transmission extra of the ionization, increase the absorption energy of the sky wave into the wave. Travels the additional distance of the ionosphere with which reaches its energy. Presence of the F1E layers of the F2 layer makes the long-range high-frequency communication possible, provided with the correct frequency is within 3 to 7 megahertz frequency band with a good skywave of determined to attain with the almost any angle radiation transmitting an antenna with a high angle of the radiation ionosphere that can be used with a moderate range to low angle of the radiation that should be used with a long-term distance communication. When operating a 7.0 to 7.3 megahertz amateur band, you may find that short, moderate distance angle of the radiation should be 40 to 30 degrees. Lower angle should be used with a long distance communication. Higher range angle that can be used to overcome the variation density of the during the peak of the sunspot with the activity amateur between 14.0 and 29.7 megahertz over the not useful over the short distances. Sky with the train with addition maximum useful angle operating with a 4 megahertz of it is about 30% of the frequency with an increase to 28 megahertz with the angle of the propagation should be the decrease with the 10 degrees above the 28.5 megahertz angle less than 10 degrees should be used. General very high radio frequency, also approximately straight lines and large hill of the mountain cast radio shadow over these areas of the same with the cap of the shadow of the present light with the receiver the located with the radio show with the receiver the weekend signal in some cases no signal at all but theoretically the range of the constant of the distance of the arrive of the distance of the determined of the heights between the two antenna. However, the communication is sometimes possible many of the hundreds of miles beyond the assumed with the horizon range. Usually very high frequency contacts are called with the abnormal the atmosphere with the condition with a few miles above the earth and normally with the warmest air with the final near the earth the air gradually becomes cooler altitude the increase of the sometime with the usual with the situation that develops the warm layer of the RR found above the cooler layer of the conditions known with the temperature inversion. When the temperature inversion exists the amount of refraction index refraction of different particles transfer within the boundaries then in from the outside with them and the difference from the channel of the direction that will conduct with the radio wave with many miles with beyond what they assume with a normal range. Ordinarily, ionosphere that does refract with the radio frequency radio signal of the normal condition signal with above the critical of the frequency high frequency return to the earth in the ionosphere that they or occasionally have with the erratic patch of the ionized atmosphere of the curve of the E layer with the ionosphere with the sporadic ionization sufficient number of intensity permanent with a very high frequency communication over the long distance. What is the scattered propagation? Two types of the scattered propagation: ionosphere with the troposphere with the cave of the ionosphere with the propagation can be found with a distance of 600 to 1200 miles with the radiation with the reach found frequency with the well above the maximum usual for the frequency behind with the transmitted power with the directive with frequency ranging with the mode with the propagation 2060 megahertz with the signal of the weak with the fluctuation wave with the greatly amplitude with the 1 inch with the next with the needleless dependable on the bandwidth with the less than 10 kilohertz of the scale with the ring a curve of the E layer with the ionosphere with the probable because ionization trails the leader of the meteorites continuously into the ionosphere with the ionosphere of storm or the disturbance of the characteristics any of the condition of the ionosphere scattered there. High transmission power requires single hop with the E layer with the maximum range, high range transmitting antenna with the must be U with the frequency transmitted single with the increase over the strength with the receive with the signal decrease. Troposphere scatter with the propagation is involved with the ionosphere with the associated with the atmospheric condition with the particular with the interest of the phenomena determined propagation orderly with the dielectrical content of the overland with the creep of the linear over the height near with the surface over the earth. The electrical content of the any of the given time depends primarily with the amount of water vapor present at the end of the period of the temperature and the version. For example, the way we find with the propagation dust exists. Frequency range of the troposphere, the scale of the propagation of the battle with 100 to 400 megahertz. The location exceed with 30 miles from the transmitter of the strength of the signal dependent on the frequency of the height with the and some of the which of the important atmosphere condition consideration cover the formation of the ducts describe the TE with the TEM modes over the modular propagation of the TE and TEM mode with associated with the waveguides or over the abbreviation transverse electric with the transverse with the magnetic waveguides with the help of the conductor with the U with the U with the either circular rectangle the U with the transmit with the waves the ultra high frequencies microwave frequency with the operation of the two inseparable fields are present with the waveguide with the electrical field with the magnetic field with the energy transmit with the electronic magnetic fields. Current voltage is present with the result of the field with the mode over the operation, particular field with the configuration within a waveguide, transverse electric mode, and with also with the electric field are perpendicular length with the guide with no electrical field is parallel with the direction of the travel. With the sporadic E skip for unknown reason with the clouds with the ionized atmosphere off of the computer with the E layer with addition with the normal E layer with the ionization, then unpredictable layer range of the from about 55 to 80 miles above the earth with the known if the sporadic E layer with the ionized cloud with which will form later may be a few feet wide, maybe several hundred miles across, and may occur over the eve of the night or day with the amateur radio band with a skip of the contract with by using the sporadic E layer, usually 10-meter band, 28.0 to 29.7 of the megahertz of 6-meter band with band 50 to 54 megahertz, although the contact with a 2-meter band that has also been made with multiple hop of the transmit with the signal that may occur. And part of the radio spectrum and the ground wave of the principle of the mode of the propagation ultra high frequency 10 to 20 megahertz, 30 below 30 megahertz, and none of the above. Chapter 3 Chapter 13 Antennas and Transmission Lines.